Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today we're going to put together a little odds and ends video. Got back from ArnFest a couple of weeks ago, and as usually is the case when I go up there, I seem to have a lot of stuff follow me home. Plus, I got a fair amount of viewer mail and some gifts and other things that have come into the shop. Always some interesting things. I think you'll find some interesting things in this episode as well. So without further ado, let's get in here and do some show and tell and show you some of the new tools and new items that have come into the shop here over the last month or two. So first item comes from Tim Gack up in Minnesota, and Tim sent this along to me back when I was working on, originally starting on building the panel for my Monarch 10EE, and he said, you know, you really ought to look at using one of these sets here for the wires that you're putting into the different terminals. And I've seen these before. I actually have had several viewers comment that I ought to be using something like this, and he was kind enough to go on to Amazon and purchase one on my behalf and send it to me. So what is this? This is a little crimp tool. It kind of comes in a little tray here with all kinds of stuff in here, and they have different terminals for different wire sizes that you would use. And this is for when you're taking a wire and just putting it up inside of a terminal on a connector. Instead of just putting the blank wire up in there, they got a little crimp, and you put this on there, and it contains all those wires so that you don't have any wires kind of getting away from you. It gives you a nice solid piece to go up in there. I'll do a quick demonstration just kind of show how it works if you've never seen this. So as an example, this is just a piece of 16 gauge wire. Notice I strip it off, and you got all the little individual wires in there. You know, usually what I'll do is I'll twist those up, and then if I'm putting this into something, you know, we'll come in here and put it in there and clamp it down. The problem is that you always get some of these little wires, you know, a couple of them will get kind of stray, whatever, and I have had situations where, you know, you had some wires that kind of got out of that little loom there or whatever, and you could potentially short something out or what have you. So the idea here is you grab the correct end piece, and this is a 16 or the gray ones here, and we'll just grab one of these, and you put this up inside of that. Notice the wire comes up into the end there, and then you take this little crimp tool. It crimps on 4 different sides, and you just boom, put it down, and now what you got is a nice little piece there that can go up into your piece like such. You tighten that down, and it's not going anywhere. It just makes a really nice crimped in, and really makes for a nice clamping surface here whenever you clamp it into whatever you're going to clamp it into. So, and no stray ends, works out real good. Anyway, I'm kind of looking forward to trying these. Honestly, guys, you know, I wouldn't mind using it on the panel I just built, but I had already built it pretty much by the time I got this kit in, so I'm not going back and pulling all the wires out and putting these on here. But I've got another panel I'll be building soon for my other lathe, and I do plan on using this on that one. So anyway, nice little set. Like I said, he picked this up on Amazon, and anyway, I think it'll be a cool little piece to have and use going forward on some of the electrical projects that we got going on around here. Makes for a really nice, clean crimp. Up next, I got a collection of books that was sent in to be by Neil Tyson. Neil is up in North Alabama, a longtime friend of mine that I've known for some time now. Retired structural engineer for NASA up there. In fact, I think I did a shop tour video of his shop sometime back. When I was up in that area visiting with them. But he sent along some books that he had acquired along the way. They came from a gentleman that was a friend of his father, a friend of Neil's father, by the name of, was it Jim Pottsmill. And Jim was quite the character, evidently, according to Neil. He said that he was actually kicked out of his house when he was 16 years old and told to get out and go make a living on his own. He traveled all over the United States doing all kinds of different things, and basically eventually became a self-taught machinist and mechanic type person that was in North Alabama. But at some point in time, Neil ended up with a bunch of his personal books, and he's thinning out his collection of some stuff right now, and was kind enough to send some of these along to me. So anyway, first off, the ones here in the middle, these, I've actually shown several books in this series before. This is from the International Library, International Textbook Company. And back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, they did a lot of correspondence courses. You could basically order up these different books that were like a course in different things, and you could be self-taught like Jim was. And I'm sure that he ordered these books and would go through them and read them, study them, and this is where he learned a lot of his trade by just reading these old books like this right here. So really neat to have these. I've actually got quite a few in this collection from this particular company in my library. I'll have to see if these are new to my stuff or not, but these things are just absolutely great references on old vintage machinery of all kinds. You can learn so much from them. So excited to have those. This one here is really kind of interesting too, the Encyclopedia of Machine Shop Practice, and this book is quite worn. You could tell it was carried with him for many years. Interesting here, he said he purchased it in 1941. Looks like right before the bombing of Pearl Harbor. He paid $2.21 for this, and he bought it while he was in San Diego. And it, again, just all kinds of basic information. And I'm sure this is one of the books that he learned from and that he referenced when he was learning the trade. You know, I've got an old book about the same vintage of this that when I was working and apprenticing in a machine shop, I found a copy of it. And I can remember reading and studying at night and learning so much from that book. And even to this day, I can, when I'm working on a problem, I can remember, you know, there's something in that old book I've got, and I'll go dig it out and look stuff up even to this day, because I just remember it because I was reading it when I was learning the trade back in the 1980s is when I was doing that. And another little book here, just a small useful thing. This is all kinds of trigonomic tables and formulas and so forth like that. So Neil, thanks so much for sending this along. He also shared a lot of stories about Jim, and I don't have time to go into all those, but he seemed like he was quite the character. I wish I could have known him. I think I would have liked him. So anyway, thanks a lot, Neil. So a little mystery gift here. I know what it is. I just don't know exactly where it came from or who it came from. But a couple of weeks ago, a box showed up at the house from Amazon, and inside of it was one of these welder's blankets, heat blankets. I had mentioned when I was working on some stuff a while back that my welding blanket was getting a little bit ragged around the edges, and I wish I had an extra one. And lo and behold, one shows up in the mail. I don't know who sent this. There was nothing in there. Like I said, it came directly from Amazon. And the funny thing is that I had ordered something from Amazon, and I thought that was what was in the book. And I just carried it down here to the shop, and it was actually a week or two before I opened it up. And when I went to open it up, assuming what was in there, it wasn't what was in there. And then I found out that what I had ordered was lost in the mail, and had to get with Amazon to have them reship what I thought was in the box. So anyway, kind of a funny story there. But whoever sent this, thank you very much. This will definitely get used. I use these welding blankets quite frequently when I'm brazing things up to let it cool down nice and slow. And I did need another one, so there we go. We got one now. Thank you very much to whoever sent that along. Up next, another collection of books. These were sent in by Dennis Dingley out in Arizona, and some interesting stuff here. So this first one here is just kind of a place where you would order steel from, 1940. Has all kinds of different steel, the information on it, etc. There's a price sheet in here. I wish we could order steel off of that price sheet today. Boy, do I. Anyway, just some interesting stuff to see what all they had. I always enjoy looking at these catalogs and stuff. There's so many neat things. Next, Smoley's parallel tables of slopes and rises. So this is all, you know, calculating different angles and pitches and angles and slopes, like the slopes and rises and things. And what's funny is that, you know, you got about this much instruction up in the front of the book, and almost the rest of the book are just tables to look stuff up in. And what's funny is, you know, in this day and age, we all carry a computer in our pocket for all intent purposes, and you can probably just go to a website somewhere, plug in the numbers, and it'll calculate everything that all these tables where you used to have to look it up and do the math, you know, we don't have to do that anymore. Life is so much easier now. But I love to have these old books because it just reminds you of what, you used to have to do to be able to calculate anything. I guess you could do it all longhand, but this basically did all the math for you and gave you the answers to so many different things. You would just look it up in the book and figure it out. So this next book here, I think is also very similar. Okay, it's field and office tables. So again, this was all mathematical tables and stuff. Instead of having to calculate stuff out longhand, you could look things up in here for doing different calculations. Trigonomic tables, all kinds of different things. These things were invaluable back in the day before the computer. Pocket companion here. Again, all kinds of different information. This is mostly about different types of steel and stuff. This was from Carnegie, I believe, is what I remember seeing. Carnegie Steel Company. So, all the technical information on pretty much all the different products that they sold. Again, this one is Steel Catalog Reference Manual. So again, looking at different steel types, and it had all kinds of technical information about all the different types of steel. And interestingly, probably a lot of this information hasn't really changed. You may not be able to order everything in the book anymore, but pretty cool stuff. Then over here, let's see, we'll do this one first. This one has to do with railroad construction. Railroad curves and earthwork. So basically rights of way where the track were built, calculating curves and doing the earthwork for railroad construction. Again, kind of engineering type stuff. A lot full of tables and formulas and how to figure things out. Pretty cool stuff. Again, now you probably just put it into AutoCAD or whatever software you're doing, and it'll calculate everything that book had to do, but just remind you of what you used to have to do a long time ago. And then this one is really interesting. This is from Santa Fe Railroad, instructions for operating and maintaining air brake equipment, and lots of really cool information here on air brakes, on trains and so forth. I think it's pretty cool that the whole back of this is just full of these charts that have the cross sections of the different pieces of equipment that were probably used on the Santa Fe Railroad. So pretty cool stuff. If you're ever working on any of this kind of stuff, this kind of information would be invaluable. So anyway, Dennis, thank you very much. We'll add these to the library. Next item here comes from David Smith out in Huntington Beach, California, and this is a little micrometer stop that he sent me that fits on a lathe. I say little, it's actually a big micrometer stop. So what you would do is you would clamp this down onto the ways of your lathe, and this was just a carriage stop. The carriage would come up and bump up against this, and you could adjust it by just turning the dial over here to fine tune exactly where you needed to. He said he bought this thinking he was going to put it on his lathe. It turned out to be way too big for his lathe, but thought I might be able to adapt it to use on some of my bigger lathes that I have. And so thank you very much for sending that along. Interestingly, he also sent along this photograph. This is a 1/8 inch scale model of a Shea three-truck locomotive that he's working on building right now, or has been working on, and he's part of a club out there, Model Engineers Club, where they have a track where they can go run these things and so forth. So anyway, I think that's pretty cool. Always amazed by the guys that make these little steam locomotives, these scale model working model steam locomotives. That small intricate work can really be challenging, and as you can see, he's doing an awesome job here. It looks great. To give you a better idea of the scale there he is riding on that locomotive out there. He's got a little seat on the tender, but it's completely operational. Pretty cool stuff. Next comes from Jerry Rubin. Jerry sent along again a couple little reference books here, Machinist Ready reference. Again, just another little book that had all these tables and mathematical tables in it, formulas, so forth, with just all kinds of handy information for working in the machine shop. And these are great to keep in your toolbox and have available to look stuff up in when you need it. So really cool. And this book, this File Philosophy, this is a great reference book for anybody that's interested in hand files. You can pick these up on eBay and so forth, but it's just got all kinds of information on on how to get the most out of your hand files. I've actually got another copy of this book, and this is a great reference, absolutely a great reference. Anyway, anybody that's interested in using hand files, I highly recommend you find a copy of this book, and it's just got tons and tons of invaluable information in it. So Jerry, thank you very much. Up next comes a transformer. This is a control transformer like you'd find on a machine to step down, say 220 volts to 110 volts for control voltage and so forth like that. General Electric transformer. This was sent in to me by Stan Cloud out in, I think it was California if I remember right, Arizona. That's where it was from. And anyways, when I was working on the Monarch lathe, it had a transformer exactly like this one that had was messed up. We had to remove it, had to replace that transformer. I ended up going with a different style transformer, but after I had already swapped it out and I posted the video, Stan says, I've got a transformer just like that. It's been sitting in here in my shop for years. Let me just send it to you. So he did exactly that. So anyway, I'm going to put this one on the shelf, and we'll have it. I use these things all the time when I'm working on new machines, so there's no doubt that this will get used. In fact, there's a very good chance that when I do my second Monarch 10EE lathe that I'm probably will end up using it on that machine. So anyway, thanks a lot for sending that along, Stan. That's definitely something that we can put to work somewhere down the road. Can't have too many transformers sitting around when you're working on old machines. Up next, some items that we picked up at ArnFest this year, swap meet, as well as some gifts that were handed to me by some individuals who came out to see me there. ArnFest is always a fun event held each year toward the end of September, 1st October up in Illinois, and made it up there again this year. This year I did a long trip, actually went up to the North Woods of Michigan up in the Upper Peninsula before headed down and hung out with my friend Aaron Sergel up there, did some blacksmithing for a couple of days. We did a video on that. Came down, visited with Mike Ferguson on the way down, who had restored a big, huge steam powered drag line that got to go out there to their fairgrounds and see that. I didn't really get to do a video on it. It wasn't really where I could do that very well. And then, of course, at ArnFest, I met up with a lot of people as well. So anyway, these are some clamps that I purchased at the swap meet, just some can't twist type clamps. These things are super handy to have around for just any kind of clamping needs. And anyway, gentleman had some out on his table, and they were at a reasonable price, so they came home with me, and these are just really handy to have. So anyway, picked up a couple of those. Let's see what else we got here. Picked up this little Dixie brass or bronze hammer. Very little use on it. It's been used a little bit, but not really mushroomed. I think I got that from Doug Broberg, if I remember right. And it was sitting on his table. Anytime I can find these little brass hammers, man, I use them all the time. They're nice for no-mar type, when you don't want to damage something that you got to hit on. So anyway, I saw that on one of his tables, and that one definitely came home with me. Really, really nice shape, and we'll put that over with the other hammers. Got a tool holder, an Armstrong tool holder number 42 that goes on like a metal planer or shaper. You got where you can put a high-speed steel tool bit down there and put it in different positions. Really handy item to have on a planer or shaper. And this one was handed to me by a gentleman. I don't recall who it was. I'm sorry. There's so many people that are there, and people were just handing me some things and this, that, and the other. So I don't remember who gave this to me, and I apologize to whoever that is. But it's just the nature of the game, I guess. But anyway, very nice tool, and definitely something that we can use over with the metal planer. I'll put this in my cabinet with my other planer tooling, and probably see it down the road. When I was visiting with Mike Ferguson, the gentleman I talked about that restored the big steam-powered drag line up in Wisconsin, while I was visiting his shop, he had a couple of these die stock handles. I think these are imports, but he had a whole bunch of them that he picked up in an auction. He sent a couple of them home with me. So again, I'll put these over in my cabinet with my dies, and they will probably get used at some point in time. I'm not sure if I have one that size or not, but I got two now, so that's awesome. Thank you, Mike. Another cool item here that was handed to me by a gentleman. Again, I don't recall who gave this to me, and again, I apologize to whoever that was, but got a pattern. This is a wooden pattern for some type of linkage that goes to who knows what. Anyway, I thought it was cool. I love these old patterns. I like making patterns. I like looking at how other people made patterns. This one is interesting to me because it's all one piece. I would have expected that a pattern like this would have been a split pattern. I'm not sure how they would have molded this, but I'm sure that they had a way to mold it. It's interesting too because if you look here, this is all round and it goes around and boom, you got a square corner there, which makes me kind of wonder if that wasn't acting as some type of a cam as this thing was rotating. I'm not sure exactly why they did it that way, but I guarantee you they had a reason for it. This right here is the core print. That would have been where it would have been hollow. They would have put a sand core in there when they cast it. You can tell the different color. That was where there would have been a core box that went along with this pattern to make that core. So anyway, interesting pattern. And now it's shop art. We'll hang it on the wall or do something with it. So pretty cool stuff. And then another book. And again, someone handed me this. I don't recall who. But this is a fairly new book, the American Steam Whistles. So this is a nice reference book all about steam whistles, which is definitely a topic of interest for me. So I'll be taking this and doing some reading and some studying, and I'm sure there'll be some really good stuff to learn about whistles. So anyway, pretty cool. I'm guessing that this book is still available if anybody's interested in it. You probably still pick one up somewhere along the line. That's my ArnFest treasures this year. And another book. So this one comes from Jerry Rubin. Jerry sent along a copy of Machinery's Handbook to me, 18th edition. This is the Machine Shop Bible, guys. If you don't have one of these in your shop and you're doing any kind of machine shop work, I highly recommend you pick one up. They're pretty easily available. They still print these. They still making new ones. They come out with different editions over the years. But pretty much any kind of question you have, formulas, how to calculate something, just technical information about working in the machine shop is more than likely in this book. And I use my copy all the time. Jerry sent this one along for me to pass along to someone. I like to keep a few of these, and when I got a young person or something that comes out to the shop and is learning how to do some things, I will often send them home with one of these. So it's very nice to have a couple of extras laying around. And this one will probably end up getting regifted to someone along the way. And very handy book to have. Again, if you don't have a copy of Machinery's Handbook, find one, pick yourself up one. They're very easy to find on eBay, bookstores, etc. And you don't have to spend an arm and a leg, or you can go buy a brand new one. Then you might spend an arm and a leg, but still, the information's worth it. So, Jerry, thanks for sending that along. So on the way home from ArnFest, I stopped off just south of Indianapolis and picked this up from a viewer who had contacted me a while back. This was actually a purchase I made, and I just picked it up on the trip home. But what this is, when you open this up, I love this box that this is in, but this is a set of balancing blades for balancing shafts or pulleys or something like that. There's a pair of these in here. I'm not going to take them completely out right now, but there's some really good bearings on here. You'd put a shaft or what have you on it, and you could turn it, and basically it'll find the heavy side of that that'll come down. You can put some weights on there and do a pretty good job of static balancing something that needs to be balanced. Really handy piece. And what's really cool too is this box that they put these together in. So you got one of the blades here. When you take the box apart, there's some back here in the back, there's a little clasp kind of like that. This piece comes out. There's the two shafts that go through there to hold it together. And then there's also the second one of these pieces in the back. And somebody really went to an awful lot of trouble to make this beautiful case that these roll around in, that you can store these in and then pull them out when you need them and put them back up. I'm really impressed with this. This is really awesome. So anyway, nice addition to the shop. Give me some capability to do some balancing. Actually going to be doing some of that coming up here before too terribly long, and you'll probably see these things in action. So really excited to have these in the shop. So another item here picked up, this came from Mike Ferguson, who we mentioned a while ago, the guy that restored the big steam drag line up in Wisconsin. And Mike actually picked up a whole bunch of brown sharp straight edges, I think at an auction or someplace. I'm not exactly sure the story, but he contacted me and told me he had this big 10-foot straight edge and wanted to know if I was interested in it. How could I turn it down? I mean, I've got, I think, every other size that Brown & Sharp made except the 10-foot one. So yeah, I had to have it. So anyway, we made a deal on this. I actually had this shipped down. It was so long, I couldn't carry it in the back of my truck. I would have had to haul a trailer up there to bring it back. So we had this shipped down to me, but went and picked it up a couple of weeks ago and brought it into the shop. This thing is massive, 10 feet long. According to the catalog that I have from 1941, this thing weighs about 300 pounds, and I believe it. Brown & Sharp did have listed in their catalog a 12-foot version as well as a 15-foot version, but those were only available by special order only. They were not regularly stocked items that they kept. So probably somewhere out there, there's some 12-footers and 15-footers around, but I would imagine they're pretty rare. But this is the largest straight edge that was just kind of part of their standard catalog. And I have heard that if you wanted them to be even bigger than that, that Brown & Sharp would make them for you. I don't know how many like that would exist in the wild either. This big box that is down here was actually what it was shipped to me in, and also what the people who had it before me, which was, who was that? Jordan Machinery Company out of Milwaukee. They had these cases that they had built that they stored them in. Evidently that company did machinery rebuilding and so forth, and when they did work on site, they would ship these boxes wherever they were working at. And he actually at one time, he doesn't have any, I don't think any left anymore, but he had several different sizes. This was the only one that I really needed, but all of them were in boxes very similar to this. With the price of lumber, these are 2-inch thick, like 2x6s and 2x8s and so forth that this thing was made out of, 2x10s even in there. The box itself is probably worth a small fortune in today's market. So anyway, glad to have this in. This pretty much finishes out my straight edge collection. I think I've got every size that was offered by Brown & Sharp, from their 18-inch version up to this 10-foot version. A couple of the sizes were not made by Brown & Sharp. Like I got a couple made by Challenge, and I think there's one of them in there that doesn't even have a name on it, but it's all the same style. But with this one, that pretty much finishes out my collection. If I were to stumble across a 12 or 15-footer, you know, maybe, but I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know that I'll ever have a need for a 10-foot straight edge. And honestly, I hope I never do have a need for it, because this thing is, I mean, you got to have a crane just to move it around. But if I do ever have a need for it, I got one, and glad to have it. So there you go. So before I get out of here, I want to just address a couple of things that came up pretty much with a bunch of different people that were asking about when I saw them up at ArnFest this year. And fair question, I haven't really talked about a lot of this. People were asking about several projects that are kind of been on hold and been kind of waiting to get back to, and give you guys a quick status update on it. So number one, the steam stoker engine that we were doing for Nashville Steam. Yes, it's still a project I'm working on, but I sent the crankshaft off to get ground, and I'm having a really hard time getting it back from the guy that's doing it. He's had that thing for almost 2 years now, and he still hasn't gotten it back. Very frustrated, but I really can't proceed on that project until I get that crankshaft back. So yes, it's just kind of waiting to get done. I'm hoping that he's going to come around and get that to me here before too terribly long. And I will say, in his defense, there's been some things going on in his personal life, that some health issues and stuff that has come into play, some family issues that have come into play. So I understand why it's taking so long, but regardless, it's very frustrating of what the situation there. But hopefully we'll get that in the shop here pretty soon. The Jimmy DeResta bandsaw project, guys, on that, I am needing my horizontal boring mill to do a project, do part of that job. And I really just made the decision that I needed to kind of hold off working on the rest of bandsaw project and focus on getting my boring mill up and running so that we could use it on that project. And the boring mill, it's been kind of on hold the last couple of weeks or a month or two, because I've had some other projects that have just been ahead of it in the queue. We had some steam locomotive repairs that had to be done at the museum. That took top priority. These cane mills, I've had some guys waiting on those for almost a year, getting ready toward the cane grinding season, kind of had to get them done. So, I'm constantly juggling things around out here in the shop to get things done. The bevel gear project, that's probably going to be the next thing we get back on. Once I finish up the cane mills, I've still got to do a little bit on those to get those out the door, but I need to get that bevel gear done, not bevel gear, but the helical gear rather. Need to get that done. And like I said, that'll probably be my next thing I jump back on. I think that's probably the biggest ones people have been asking about. But as you guys know, I've got a full-time job outside of working in the shop. I pretty much only have Saturdays to get out here and do things. So I'm limited in what I can get done. And when things happen, sometimes projects kind of get moved in front of others as far as priority, just depending on the circumstances. And that's kind of what's going on. And that's what's holding me up on some of this stuff. But we'll get to them. And hopefully between now and the end of the year, we'll be able to get back on a few of those projects and get some things knocked out there. So guys, with that, as always, thank you so much for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thumbs up, and those comments that you guys leave, those are awesome, greatly help out. That really helps out a lot with the analytics on the channel. Hit that bell icon up there if you want to get notifications when new videos posted, because you would think that subscribing to the channel would be all you need to do for YouTube to tell you when a new video is posted, but no. If you want to know when they're posted, you got to hit that bell icon. You got to go do that one extra step. So please do that if you're interested. And as always, a big, huge thank you to the supporters out there who support me financially through Patreon, through PayPal, and other means. Like I always say, guys, I really could not do everything that we do out here in the shop if it wasn't for your help and support. And it is greatly, greatly appreciated. So guys, with that, we will be signing off. As always, again, thanks for watching.